Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Zach Clayton, Community Pay It Forward, Community Dare to Care, and the PAC channels. I am sitting in the studio alone today because with everything that I had going on for the 22-hour podcast, I kind of let it slip by that we didn't have a guest for Footprints Forward. Oops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to play a really important recorded interview that I did with Mr. Kyle Goodknight. Kyle has started a wonderful program that is now part of my program, of the Community Pay It Forward program, where what we do is every time you make a purchase, you can support his mission. Kyle has a long history with medical services, including respiratory help, which is just, we heard from two individuals throughout the show that had dealings with respiratory health. And I think we learned a lot more about it and some of the horrible things that they had to go through. One of them was in the service, and when someone would come in for respiratory health and they were being, look, their job when they come in, if they're being held together by a machine, it's their job to let them go. That's got to be very hard on anyone and everyone. So then on top of that, in which you will see Kyle, you'll flat out see the pain when he tells this story. And this is something that he's got to live with as an EMS technician, or I know him as EMTs. My parents were EMTs a long time ago, but they had one of those stupid CPR dolls. Scared the hell out of me when that thing fell down out of the closet. These are, once again, these are professions that we kind of take for granted, and we don't give them the praise quite often that we give doctors and nurses and police officers and firefighters and veterans. But quite often with the EMS, they're the first ones on the scene, and they're the first ones to administer life-saving actions. And if it's not for them, they're not going to get to the hospital in time, and they're not going to live. Then, of course, with the respiratory, they've got the unfortunate job of intubation, and sometimes they get, as Kyle was talking about, sometimes they get the satisfaction of lifelong friendships because it was their work that was able to keep someone alive. Sometimes they lose them. I started the 22-hour podcast because my grandfather said to me when I was a child, about 13 years old, my grandfather told me the story of him being a medic in World War II. And he said, it still haunts me today that kids would come in and they'd be missing limbs, and I knew we'd lose them, and they're still alive today. Yet others would come in with very minor injuries that never made it home. Now, I remember looking up at my grandfather, and I remember seeing that tear in his eye. And I talked to my dad about that interview, and Dad made the statement, he never, ever talked about this, ever. Kyle has started a program, or he's in the ground stages of starting a program where people can talk when they need it. Look, this is the whole reason why we do Footprints. This is the whole reason why I do the 22-hour podcast. Because we need to find the people who are out there trying to initiate this difference, to trying to tell people, you know what? I understand that you don't want to go to the counseling, and that's not for you. And I understand that you don't want to do it this way. But if you ever considered maybe doing it this way, we're starting it this way. What do you think? Do you think this might be something that fits you? If not, hey, that's not a problem. We can keep working. We can keep finding something, because there's going to be something somewhere that's going to help you. I invite you to go onto YouTube and look up Community Mission to Serve Our Veterans. Sorry. It was a powerful show because of the stories. Again, I'm never going to say that I did a good job, because I could have asked thousands of more questions. But that's kind of not what I want to do. I want to ask questions for curiosity's sake, but more to the point, I want people like Kyle to tell their stories. I want their stories to get out there, because you know what? Their stories are going to be the ones that are going to change lives. My questions are just going to quash my curiosity. And that's not what I want to see come out of this. That's not what Dennis or Patrick or Diamond or Z or Trevor or Stephanie or any of us. That's not what we want. We want people to be able to stand up and say, I heard that story. I think I'd like to try that. Instead of going out and having that last drink, and instead of going out and grabbing that gun, instead of doing all this other stuff, this would be a much better alternative. There's a very large chance that this episode is going to run a little short. Then again, you all know me. When we get done with this interview, huge chance I'm going to come on and I'm just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. We all know me. Got one more really quick announcement that I need to get out there. You're going to see a QR code above Kyle. I need you to scan that. We're still raising money. The silent auction is still going on. We've had to extend it because we've got items that have no bids. Folks, this is too important. Those 9 organizations are still way too important to not have any bids. All you got to do is scan that QR code. Go onto that QR code and make a bid on some of this stuff. It's wonderful, wonderful items for an even better cause. I'm going to shut the auction down this upcoming Sunday. We're going to find whatever we have to do with whatever's left. But I don't want to do that. I want to see us coming together and making a go with these items. So please, the QR code that's going to be above Kyle's head, please scan it. Start bidding now. Start bidding every day. Keep up with it. There's so much good in what you're doing. These 9 organizations are going to be able to split this. Next year, we're probably not going to do 9. We're only going to do 5 next year until we can get the money set right. We did have a problem with Buffalo Wild Wings happening to drop 2 of their stores at the very last minute. Things happen. We understand. So that was one mark against it. Now we need to get this auction going so we can raise money. So please scan the QR code and please bid. If you're not in Greeley, you're not in Northern Colorado, bid $15 on that hockey ticket. When you do that, tell me. Take it to a church. Take it to a school. Take it to the Boys and Girls Club. And I'll donate those tickets in your name for someone to go to that game. Give it to some fat guy who likes to do podcasts for 22 hours because he's a huge hockey fan. I'll try to find one of those, and I'll make sure I give them the ticket. Take them to the the Veteran Center, and get four veterans that can go together and watch a game. There can be a lot of good done by simply taking and signing those tickets over. But once again, this is my good friend and a brand new brother in the Community Pay It Forward program, Mr. Kyle Goodknight. I hope you enjoy this video because I really had a good time recording it. But please take a look at the pain and take a look at the heart, because this is the reason why we do these videos. Joining us now is a guy I met a couple weeks ago. Consider him a really good friend. More importantly, he's a really, really good guy. Lot of hero services, Kyle. Your work in the medical field and EMT and all this other stuff really makes you valuable to your community, and I think valuable to what we're doing, because you can bring to light some of the things that are needed by so many. So I'd like to introduce Kyle Goodknight of KyleGoodknight.com. Tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do, my friend.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Zach. So, so my name's Kyle Goodknight. I'm a first responder paramedic. I'm also a respiratory therapist. I was a therapist first, and then I went over into the first responder world about 20 years ago. Total of 26 plus years in the healthcare field and first responder stuff. So 20 of it is first responder. So what I'm actually doing is I've had I've had an incident where I had my own PTSI. It was a blind side, I call it, because it was not expected, and I found myself in a rut. Right, I found myself in a spiral, and I was trained well enough with my mentors that I was able to raise my hand and say, "Hey, something's not right. I don't know what's wrong. I just know it's not right." Right? So
Right.
so I, my mentor came to my home a day after my shift when all this stuff went down, and it wasn't just one thing. It was the same thing, but multiple times in a very short period of time. And she deemed me to like, "Hey, are you willing to go get some help?" And I said, "Absolutely." I was like, "Because I don't like feeling like this. I know it's gonna cause problems in more parts of my life, and not just with my work." So I went and got some help, and got on the other side of it. And then I'm sitting there in a class one time, a big lecture. It was a seminar about EMS, and it's the same stuff up on stage. It's 12 leads, it's trauma care, it's difficulty breathing, the difficult airway. And I'm like, yeah, those are all great, and we train on that a lot. One thing we've never got training on is how to build and fortify ourselves. From the beginning of my career, and goes back into the schooling. I went to school back in 97, so that ages me. There was no training on the hospital side respiratory about resilience and how to package things properly when we see what we see. And in EMS, there wasn't any training back then for us ourselves. I ended up speaking to several people as I started to build this course, because when I was sitting in that classroom, I'm like, I need to build a course about us. That because I know we have a problem, we have a stigma, we have that inability to say, hey, I do feel a little wonky as a whole, as a first responder whole, and that includes firefighters, EMTs, police, emergency dispatchers, corrections officers, all those first responders, right? And I ended up talking to several during my research on this. I talked to one police officer who was like, I said, "Hey, how much training do you get in the academy?" He's like, 2 hours. I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome. 2 hours a week. That's what you guys are doing now. That's great. You guys totally need that." He's like, "No." He's like, 2 hours for the entire time we talk about ourselves. And I'm like, "Oh, that's a problem. 2 hours isn't
Yeah.
enough. We know it takes anywhere between 66 days and 285 days, I think, as the research said, to establish a habit. And to establish self-care and to establish resilience, you need to do it over time with someone who's been there and done that and can help you. So basically, that's what I'm doing. I've created a course. I've found some very good tools and knowledge and things that tie a lot together. That things that tied together for me, including before I became a medical professional. So like it goes back that far. And a lot of people don't understand that that's tied together. Our brain health, our communication with our family, whether that's you're married and have a wife and kids, or whether that's your parents when you're a young EMT or a young firefighter or police officer and you don't have a true family yet. You may only have your family as in your mom and dad and brothers and sisters or whatever your dynamic is. That is still important too, because if they don't understand your world, then that's a stressor, right? And of course, it's not all about the stress we see on scene. It's not all about that. It's the stress about your home life. You're away from your family for extended periods of time. And this is why it even goes into like the hospital realm. Hospital realm people, I worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, sometimes 3 days in a row, sometimes over weekends where everything was going on with the rest of my family because they're not in healthcare, or most of them weren't in healthcare. My wife is. My wife's a nurse. So, I mean, that was a double whammy, right? So it was one of those things where it's not just what we see and what we deal with at the job. It's also what we deal with at home. I mean, you know, the other day it snowed 8 inches in like an hour here where I live. And I wasn't there to help clear it all, and that doesn't feel great. I want to be there,
Yeah.
like my wife's out there with her broken finger trying to because the dog's broke her finger a couple weeks or a couple months ago and it's still healing. She's out there trying to move 8 inches of snow. That's not fun for her. I don't like that. My garage door, anytime it's ever anything, any problems that happened, and this is Murphy's slash first responders law, if you will. If anything goes wrong, it's when you're on duty, right? Car broke down when she was 8 months pregnant. I couldn't get to her. I was in the middle of a shift, garage door bust. She can't get out of the garage to go to work and I can't, I'm not there to help lift it because it's a heavy, once that spring, everybody knows once the spring breaks, it's a very heavy door. But luckily, we have neighbors, thank God. But that's all part of it. It's not just what we see on scene. It's how we bridge the gap and how we come back home and present ourselves too. If we present ourselves under that same stress that we were just in, then that's not good for our kids, our parents, our wives, our husbands, our significant others, whatever you want to call, who you have at home, who you come home to, your own dogs. If you live by yourself as a first responder and you come home to your dogs, and maybe that's a little caveat because dogs always make me happy no matter what, and unless they've got diarrhea or sick, then I'm really cranky.
Yeah. I got one right now that was pushing up my elbow just a second ago. I kind of look like
I'm surprised mine haven't come and showed their faces. I got big dogs. I got five dogs. So.
Real quick question for you. First off, I want to kind of remind people out there that one of the things that you as EMS has to deal with every day, as just a normal citizen, how aggravating it is when other people are driving. Imagine having to get to a place very quickly, and not because you're running late, because someone's life is in danger,
right,
with the way that these other people drive. Okay,
yeah.
so that would be one thing. Kyle, please explain to me the difference between PTSD and PTSI.
So how I understand it, and this is the PTSI is a newer term they're starting to use, and even we unfortunately lost a firefighter out in the California area in the beginning of February. And I say we, I mean first responder world. And they put on the public announcement that he succumbed to his struggles with PTSI. So people are starting to use the I, and the I stands for injury or incident. So D is a disorder. I believe when it comes to the disorder, it's a long-term process that is it is a true known disorder. Read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and they talk, very, very deeply about, everything that goes into the disorder of, post-traumatic stress. Where the PTSI comes in is an injury, an incident, something that happens it affects you in a way, just that single incident affects you in a way that you feel uh, the same feelings that eventual PTSD people have, but you feel it more abruptly and more acutely, if you will. So, and then, all PTSIs can go into PTSD. Now, the nice thing is if we know that there's PTSI, okay, I just had an incident that I don't feel right. 2 weeks afterwards, and I'm talking like when it comes to time frame, not the day of. A lot of times we can package things well in the first day or two, and then like a week later, something reminds you, and you get the shake. Have you ever got the shake? Anybody's ever got the shake? You think of something because our mind is very powerful. I chop my fingers off on the top of my finger off on a table saw, and once in a while, I'll think of that moment when my finger hit the blade and I shake, and that's a PTSI, right? Now I can move on. Right? Literally, I'm not worried about it now. I'm not dreading on it now. But it's those PTSIs are those little incidences that give you the shake, that give you that weird feeling. That if you can start to understand that that's what that is, you can package it properly. I'm not saying like, okay, every incident you need to dive deep into therapy. And in even the word therapy anymore, there's so many new things you can do that doesn't involve the word therapy that people don't understand. And that's another thing that I'm bringing to my course is it's not about talk therapy all the time, right? It's about things that you can do for yourself, the mindset, the self-care, the mindfulness and thinking, and how you perceive things. So and then if it gets to the point where you need some form of guidance, there's like I said, it's hard not to say the word therapy, but there's EDMR, there's hypnotherapy, there's all kinds of stuff out there that are proven to make a difference and even destroy years and years and years of trauma of any sort, right? Now, is it overnight? No, just like it's not overnight that you have a PTSD situation. So, my PTSI was, I didn't even realize that it was something that stemmed from my youth until about 3 months ago. And we're sitting in, if this is evergreen, we're sitting to, February 21st of 2024. My incident that sent me for a loop was 5 years ago. And through the process of dealing with that, I came out on the other side feeling great about things and understanding and packaging it properly. I can go on calls now that are similar to the one that happened with me, multiple ones and that happened to me in a row, and it was, and my coworkers know that this type of run, they need to check in with me if we go on that kind of run again, because when in EMS, we never know where we're going to get. I mean, hell, I delivered my first baby in 25 years a month ago. You just never
Yeah.
know what you're going to get, right? So it's one of those things where the communication, stripping away the stigma. I think if there's one major message, is that stigma that surrounds us as first responders, that we have to be tough and that we train for this. That's the double-edged sword, or that's the conundrum. A lot of people think that we trained for this. We trained to be able to see the hard stuff. We trained to how to fix it or how to deal with it in the moment. We didn't train for the aftermath. We are starting to, as a whole. I did talk to a couple of EMS class people that run paramedic programs, and I asked them straight up, hey, do you do anything about mental health for the person? Like, not mental health runs where we go and we deal with the mental health patient, but for us. And he said, we're starting to sprinkle it in because COVID kind of helped that, which is great. A couple of good things that came out of COVID and the shutdowns and the mental health strain that COVID caused, it brought a lot of that up to the light, and people are a little bit more open about it. The stigmas aren't completely stripped, but they're peeling away, right? So if there's, that my course, first thing we talk about, no matter what, we have to make sure that you come in with a completely open mind and that you have zero stigma towards what you're trying to fix yourself or fix. If it's a loved one that comes into my course, that they're trying to make sure that they don't have a stigma of their loved one that puts them without being able to communicate, issues. So,
One of the things that while you were sitting there talking, one of the things that I remember, one of the that I have with post traumatic is I slipped on ice, and my foot hit our stone house, and it completely detached my ankle from my leg. And I remember the EMT coming to take me in, and I made a little bit of a sound when I went to go try to move or something like that, and the guy goes, "It's okay if you holler. I mean, that looks like it hurts." And I'm like, "Yeah, but is it really going to do me any good?" And he goes, "It probably make you, probably make you feel a little bit better." And I'm like, "Yeah, I doubt that very seriously, but I love." I knew what it would do is it would just, bring more attention. But
Right.
yeah, that was a fun time. I couldn't imagine what they thought of when they first walked into the yard, though, because it was the middle of winter.
Mm.
Obviously, there was ice on the ground. You don't get a lot of ice on the ground in the middle
There
of
he
summer.
is.
So, hi, go now, please. But my dad came out of the house and threw a cover over me. So these EMS guys come walking up. There's a covered up body on the ground, So I couldn't imagine what they were thinking. It's like, going, wait, I thought we were here for a leg
For a broken leg. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: your wife, yourself, working in this, do you two often talk to each other about stressors, or is it better for the relationship and for yourselves to talk to someone else and not, because I could see how, you've got that old saying, leave work at work, leave home at home. And look, that's impossible for anyone. That's
Yeah.
just
It-
that's
that-
that's
yeah.
the way it is. It's impossible for anyone. But I would imagine it would really be difficult to do that if you two would like really need to talk to each other about that
Right.
to a point. So how do you two manage that?
Well, we didn't manage it for a while, and that's why we faced divorce at one point in time in our marriage. About 12 years in, I came home from a shift, and she's like, "Hey, I'm done," and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm moving out," and I'm like, "Wait, whoa, what? Hold on." So it was one of those things where that was through unpackaging all of that, we spent 2 years unpackaging and reconciling our marriage, which was fine. Out of 24 years so far, 2 years is a drop in the bucket,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm totally happy, that my kids got to grow up in a because they were younger then. They were probably 9 and 6, 5 and 8, right around there. Um, so they got to grow up in their informative years with a combined household and not split up. So that was nice, and that was one focus that her and I had. But what we found during that process was that we were in a crazy cycle, and the crazy cycle comes from the book, Love and Respect. And what it is, hey, I'm not showing you love, so therefore you're not going to show me love. Or I'm not showing you respect, so therefore I'm not showing you respect. And that comes with, not talking about our jobs, not communicating. So another big part of what I talk to people about is communication. Communication in general can open up a lot of doors. You don't have to go into detail. You don't like HIPAA rules. We're really not allowed to go into detail. We can do some generalities. There's plenty of people that I've seen be like, "Hey, I saw your wife the other day," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, where'd you see her? At the store?" And like, "No, I was in the doctor's office. She didn't tell you?" I'm like, "Oh hell no, she don't tell me she sees anybody we know. Like that's not allowed. That's she can get fired for that." Like I'm like, now that you told me that you go to her practice, I still can't even go back and ask her about what you guys discussed, right? I can just, "Hey, oh, by the way, I heard that blah 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 goes to your practice now." And she goes, "Oh,
Hey,
that's nice."
Lloyd just
She
told
doesn't
me
even
about his
agree.
warts. What did you see?
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm like, even when I'm like, "Oh, by the way, I bumped," and we're talking about neighbors. I mean, I've got neighbors come up to me years later and be like, "Oh yeah, well, I saw Jen today. She was busybody all around the office," and I'm like, "Oh, okay. You must go to her practice." "Yeah, you didn't know that?" I'm like, "Yep." And then even when I go back and talk to her, I'm like, "Oh, I found out that this neighbor goes to your office now." She's like, "Okay, that's nice." And she does it like it's like she shuts it down. It's so nice, right? But when it comes to what we see at work and what we deal with at work, because she's a pediatric nurse, and there's parents just, I'm telling you right now, it's not the pediatrics that's the problem. It's some of the parents, right? Just like
Hmm.
typical, like when dogs are a basket case, it's their handler, right? Their handler
Yeah.
doesn't know how to control the dog. So, but she has a high stress environment as well, um, and we are now, the communication has been fixed. We've done it with our kids. We don't sugarcoat anything with our kids, at age appropriately, mind you. You don't come home and talk about the crazy stuff sometimes, but hey, by the way, dad had a pretty rough night last night. We had a pretty important call, and just, if I feel a little off today, just, that's what it is. I'm going to do my best to try to get myself in the present to make sure that I'm here for you as well, and I'm not distant. So communication is really the key. And yes, we do share with one another our struggles at work. Now, we get to the point where we're trying, I do my best not to try to get, if it's something that is um stressful to me, and is not, and it got me into a fit of discomfort or anger at work, I try not to get back into that anger at home when I'm telling her what my day was like. And that's the important thing. And we do listen to each other. We do give support to one another, and it's better now, of course, than it's ever been, because we've just got so much practice at it, right? And it's not perfect when you first start out trying to communicate your outside of the home world with your loved ones, but it's just a matter of appropriately and legally being able to explain what you have gone through, and that why you may feel a little off today, and things, hey, what makes me feel good is to sit down and build Legos with you, buddy. If I come home and I'm like, "Hey bud, I know you said earlier that you like to build Legos with me. Let's go ahead and build some Legos for a couple of minutes, and just let's do something together, so I can get away from what I dealt with, yesterday at work, and I can focus on you. So communication, I think, is honestly the bottom line of what we need to do when it comes to our loved ones and our jobs. And that can be tough. Sometimes people don't want to hear it, and that can be something where a third party person, not a counselor, a moderator of some sort, somebody who is trained to unpackage. That's one thing that when we went through our couples therapy, we were able. Our third party person wasn't like a shrink. He was more of a moderator, right? He was a counselor, and what he was able to do was like the words that came out of my mouth that she didn't understand. He was able to like say, hey, what he really means in guy talk for you to understand is this. And that's one thing we learned during that process, is that she communicates a little bit differently than I do, and how to unpackage what I'm communicating, right? So
that would be, those moderators, they've got to have nerves of steel, because you gotta go to that point where I'm not trying to mansplain something to you,
right,
but what and I see a lot of times that there are conversations that you're in an argument with somebody where two people are saying the exact same thing, but they're saying it different, and it comes across as you're arguing, and it's like, we're not arguing, we're saying the exact same damn thing. Look, I just say it this way, you say it that way, but it means the same thing. Let me ask you this, because this is one of the things, and see, I wrote this down, and like we were talking about earlier, if I write it down, I'm going to see it after we're done, and I'm going to be like, we didn't even get a chance to ask that. So what are the difference between what are the stressors difference between an EMS and respiratory therapy? Because
that's a good therapy. One. Oh my gosh, that's a great one. So respiratory therapy, if people don't know what that is, we're the ones that deal with the ventilators and breathing treatments. And we're basically, the easiest way to say it, to understand it, is we're a nurse specifically for the respiratory system, airway and lungs. We do have some cardiopulmonary departments that sometimes we do some cardio stuff, and they're combined. But I worked at 3 different level 1 trauma centers. You see all kinds of stuff come into level 1 trauma centers. One of them was a pediatric level 1 as well. So I saw some crazy stuff, kids being burnt, dipped in water, blah, all that kind of stuff. I've seen some wonky stuff. And I think the difference where the stressors are there is you don't really have any downtime. You just have to go to the next patient. And there's also the fact that most hospitals help more people than they don't, right? More people survive their stay at the hospital than die at a hospital. A lot of people think, well, I don't want to go to the hospital. People die there. Well, people die on our roadways way more than our hospital systems. But when it comes to the stress between the two, when we're done with a run, sometimes we don't ever find out anything about what happened to that person. We're lucky enough now, my department now would have a digital format for our charting, and I can click a button that says follow up, and we have a team that follows up. We have different people for each hospital in our local area that have connections to get in HIPAA permitted, to get the information after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, how many ever long it takes to get the diagnosis from them of what happened with that person, and we get follow up. We get closure, right, with that. And I think that's a big thing, where for a lot of times people that don't have the closure, the wondering if what I did helped, or if it didn't help, what could I have done differently, and then critique my care, right? So respiratory wise, it's high stress, and the fact that there's, I've had 5 ventilators one time in a 12-hour shift that came into the ER, and 3 of those were overdoses that were dropped off on our front porch, right? You're like, whoa, that's a stressful situation.
Yeah.
That was also for me a very adrenaline rush for me. And it was stressful in the moment, but I knew that I was doing everything in every single moment to help that person survive. And that is helpful, right? So then I see that person walk out of the hospital later on that day, or 2 weeks from then if they get put in the ICU, or traumas that come in and I see them, after surgery up, because with respiratory, we kind of float the hospital. We're not always in the ER, or we cover the floors, we cover ICUs, and we rotate. So there's times when you see and you have the ability in the hospital to walk up and see how a patient was doing that you came into the ER. So there's a lot more closure, and a lot more, you see a lot of the things that happen on the backside where they survive or they get better, and that feels good. And you don't have those same stressors that were crazy in the moment. You see things, I mean, I've had a patient where he dove into a pool, broke his neck. Well, I became pretty close to him in the ICU setting because I cared for him for weeks. And after that was all said and done, him and his family, because we got to be so close, they invited me over for a visit at their home to see his home life now that was changed. And he was an ex Big Ten football player, right? And it was one of those things where, you know, I got to see how he, unfortunately, yes, he is paralyzed, but he is living a life and his brain is still intact, and he is still able to have a conversation. And I got to see that. So that the stressors of his injury that were on me during that time, they're not there, because I know that he got to the backside of it with some form of life, right? And that's very helpful. So it is a big difference between the respiratory stress and the EMS stress. Sometimes with the EMS stress, there's things, because I personally, and a lot of us, I would think, a lot of first responders, they operate in the community that they live in, or they're close to, or they
Yeah.
get close to. My specific PTSI, it affected my whole family. The person I was unable to help because they were already gone was actually a friend of my daughter. And when I came home, she was crying, and I'm like, "What's going on, babe?" And she's like, "My friend just died, and somebody I go to school with." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And she looked on my face and knew that I was on that run, because she put two and two together, that we live really close to where her friend lives, and that I was at work and then I just came home. And she was like, "Oh my God, you were on that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but babe, I was." And, why couldn't you help her, Dad? I mean, come on. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, sorry, but,
No,
that's one of
no.
those things that, I mean, here's where it kind of creeps up sometimes. It's like I couldn't help her friend. They were already gone. There was nothing I could do, nothing my team could do. And that hurts, because it's one of those things where you don't want your daughter to look at you like you were supposed to do a job, Dad, and you couldn't do it. Well, unfortunately, they were already too gone before I got there. But yeah, that was the beginning, and then I had multiple runs after that that were the same concept, the same situation. And it was like, maybe it was that was a big one, because it wasn't just the girl, it was her whole family. And mom and dad and brother as well. So it was devastating to the community. It was devastating to myself. It was devastating to my crew. I ended up, one of my groomsmen was best friends with the dad back in high school and early college. There was just too many connections, right?
Too many connections. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a rough one, right? And then a month later, we had 9 of these runs in a row. And and it was like, "What is going on?" And it was like, "Okay, hold on a second. There is something not right here with me internally." And it was, and luckily, like I said, I raised my hand and got some help, and I'm on the backside of it now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, yes, you saw me get emotional because, the family factor came into it, and I still think of it once in a while, but it's packaged better. It's not packaged in a way that brings me stress. It brings me understanding, and it's been put in a place where if it does creep up, or if I ever go on a run like that again, which I have, I'm in a better place to know that it's not going to affect me the same way, because I went to my tool bag. I figured out what tool needs to be to fix it. And then if I ever get back to that case, I know where that tool is. Just like I carry a first in bag. I know exactly where my ambu bag is to breathe for someone is. That's the same concept that I'm teaching when it comes to my course, is that I want people to have a mental first in bag when they need help, or they don't feel right, or they've they built these tools, they've packaged them properly, and they know where to go in the bag to grab the tool that could help them with that. And if that tool doesn't work, what's the next tool? Well, there's plenty of tools out there now. It's not just one-stop shop. There are plenty of tools in the toolbox to help us to package things properly.
Kyle, I want to thank you so very much, and just to let you know, I please send your wife my love, my respect.
I will do.
When you got emotional just a minute ago, and when you told me about how the parents are one of the worst part, you're right. I remember my son being 2 years old, and we had to rush him in because his oxygen level was really, really low,
Yeah.
and they couldn't draw blood from my son. They kept missing. And I remember telling that nurse, and I mean, I apologized to her up and down that night, but I mean,
Right.
still, I
In the
remember
moment.
looking at her, telling her, you know what, if you stab him one more time and don't get it, I'm going to stab you.
Yeah. Oh,
I was,
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
my son just looked up at me and goes, Daddy, she's
That
hurting me. And I'm
right.
like, you're sitting there and like tears running down my face because
Yeah.
your kid's saying,
And that's a PTSI right there. You don't want your kid to
yeah,
get hurt. I
yeah,
there's there and there's I mean, if we had all the time in the world, my daughter got put in the ICU and went on ventilator support because I didn't make the decision properly to get her help early enough. There's
yep.
that one. That messed me up, because it was like, wait a second, I didn't make a decision and I'm a paramedic. I should have seen this coming. And unfortunately I didn't.
There's
But,
nothing in this world that'll make your life change worse or more than your kids
oh,
and
no
the
doubt.
decision that you made on your kids. So,
Yep.
hey,
Exactly.
I want
But
to
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I do want to mention this. I'm sure that people are watching this. You see my email address and whatnot, but I'm also putting on a free webinar on March 1st. And I can give Zach here the link that people can go and find that webinar and sign up for it. Come to get to know me a little bit more. I have a couple of things that can help you in the moment during that webinar. It's not the full course, of course not. Remember, we talked about 66 to 285 days, but it is definitely something where I want to make sure that anybody watching this, whether you're a first responder, a family member of a first responder, in nursing, hospital work, any type of high stress situation, I really feel as I was building this, that this could actually extend out to anybody in high stress. A lot of the same concepts are anything with high stress, not just first responder and what we see. So, because we know that there's heck, one of the most stressful jobs I ever had was when I was in the corporate world, and
Yep.
developing medical products. That was a very high stress job for some reason. And I'm like, nope, I want to go back to clinical. I want to go back to clinical. And if I have to pump on someone's chest, that's a lot less stressful than this world of corporate and all the things that happen in the corporate world. So if anybody's in the corporate world, they know what I'm talking about. But
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
if
Send me that information and we'll flash
yeah,
it
it'll be on
across.
my website too. He's put
So,
my website up there a couple of different times, my email. If that's something that interests you and you want to be a part of it, I'm the only Kyle Goodknight in the world spelled the way that I spell it. I put a K in the middle of my last name, good knight in shining armor, if you will. I also purchased Goodknight without the K just on my website, just so if anybody forgets to put the K in, they still get me. So it's there is one other Kyle Goodknight in the world that is spelled without the K, and I've met him and I've talked to him on Facebook a couple times through chat. But that was pretty interesting. But yeah,
all
not
right,
hard to
my friend. Well, you know what? Hey, everybody, just remember that QR code above Kyle's head. Uh, that is a place where you can go and you can donate right now to help people who go through something similar to what Kyle's going through. We're going to be working with Kyle much, much more here in the near future and be able to take and strengthen what he's got going on. And who knows, maybe next year he will be sitting in the same position as one of our benefactors next year. Kyle, I want to thank you very much. Please keep up the great work.
thank you.
I know that those 36-hour shifts have got to be a pain, but you know what? You're doing wonderful things.
Yep, it's my purpose. So that's another reason why I need to package things properly. Is this is what I was put on this earth to do, and I learned that back when I saved my mother's life back in 2000. So
Yeah.
that's when I
Thank
figured it
you.
out.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All the love in the world to you and your team.
Appreciate it.
And please take care of yourself and everyone around you. But thank you very much, Kyle, and we'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you. Thanks. Bye.
Like I mentioned before, I mean, the best thing about what I get to do is I get to hear stories like this. I get to hear the why. Why are we doing this? Why do I do this? Why do I do what I do? When he teared up talking to his daughter, you know, it's no joke. I mean, we've all had to tell a kid no at one point in time. We've had to disappoint our kids. My son missed out on a trip to go to Germany, Switzerland, and Austria because of my motorcycle accident. And I'll guarantee you, if Kyle could go back, he would injure himself to save those lives. I'd go through that motorcycle accident 3 times a day if I could have got my son on that trip. But you can't. You can't. It's not in the cards. It's just not the way it works. The link you see below me is the link to go to his webinar. Do me a favor, just go to the webinar, or just go to the page, just go to the link and find out a little bit more about it. Find out what he's doing. I mean, if you have to if your job concerns emergency technicians or doctors or people who take on other people's pain, I am not going to compare what we do with anywhere near what they do. So please don't take this as that. But we deal with a lot of people who come to us and they're low on hope. They're low on, and we're giving them something. We're not giving them much. I wish we could give them a hell of a lot more than we do, but we don't. We give them what we can, and while they are happy with what we do, they always walk out the door, and I've always got that feeling, damn it, I wish we could do more. We hear about their story, and it eats on you for a little bit. Not that they need the help. By no means does it have anything to do with them needing the help. What hurts is that no matter how hard you try, there's always that voice in your head that goes, you could do more. Quite honestly, that voice is a royal pain in the butt. Kyle understands that. As he said, he and his wife, they almost split because of what they do is going to come with complications. What they do is going to come with ramifications when it comes to working together, working apart. It's the reason I asked him if they can, even talk to each other about that, and that was a weird question to ask because, when Adrian and we have a problem at work, we can talk to each other about it. We can kind of work through it. We can understand what is wrong with one another. Could you imagine being in a world where you can't talk to your spouse? Because of HIPAA, because of, just because of everything else that they have to go through. Could you imagine that? Could you also imagine being on the other side, knowing that there's something wrong and you can't ask? Imagine how much stress is there. I can't imagine what that's like. Adrian and I are very, very lucky that we get to talk to each other when someone comes in, and we wish, because we sit there after people leave and we try to go through our heads. What can we do to find more, to help more? We do it after every single person leaves. But we don't have that restriction there, that we can't talk about it. Oh, my love to every single doctor and HIPAA compliant worker that's out there, because you have to deal with that on your own primarily. I know that there are specific people that they can talk to, but still. One of the things that we heard the other night was, hey, we've got a waiting list for such and such an amount of time. We've got a long way to go. We've got a long, long way to go. Not trying to be braggadocious, though, but I think that getting the amount of people that we got together the other day and starting to discuss these things, I really think that we can make a huge bit of difference. Hey, I got a couple real quick announcements I want to make. One, coming up in just a matter of days, something that is very, very, very important to me. March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. I'm going to be working with Jeff Pearson throughout the month, and we're going to be bringing you stories and talking about brain injuries, the different brain injuries there are, and how we can support someone with a brain injury. Look, I know I've said it a million times. You break an arm, you put a cast on it, no matter if it's you or me. If it's a brain injury, you don't know if the person's going to be able to have complete and total motor function, or if they're just going to have severe migraines every minute of every day. You don't know how it's going to be. For the next month, Jeff and I are going to get together. We're going to talk to people. We're going to talk to each other. We're going to try to just bring some awareness to Brain Injury Month. So if you know of anybody who would like to talk about their brain injury, or if they would like to, talk about something that they went through that helped them out, please have them get in touch with us. All they have to do is go to communitypayitforward.us, communitypayitforward.us, and send me a message. Then, starting Wednesday, we're going to continue all of these conversations on PACT. The fourth Wednesday of every month is going to continue to be serving our heroes, both country and community. We're going to continue these conversations, and we're going to continue working towards making a difference. This conversation cannot stop. We have to keep going. And look at that. I was worried about ending short, and I ended up running long. I just don't know how to shut up. There's going to be more information on the website and on all of our social media and everything about this upcoming change to Wednesdays for the time being. Hey, I want to thank Things Network for allowing us to simulcast with them every Monday morning at 9 a.m. I want to thank one more time everybody who supported us this last Thursday night for the 22-hour marathon community mission to serve our veterans. Please make sure you go on and you get in the silent auction. We need your support. We've got 9 organizations we're trying to raise money for. A few things fell through. We need your help. Donate today. My name is Zach Clayton. I want to thank everyone that is in my family that I screwed up. I didn't have us a guest, so they weren't able to be here because, well, their leader, their humble leader or whatever, it fell asleep on the job. But we will be back next week with the live show starting at 6 p.m. East, 4 p.m. Mountain. Don't know who it's going to be yet, but we're going to be back to talk about it. So please make sure that you love somebody out there, because somebody out here loves you. If you're not helping anyone, you're hurting everyone. So please, please make sure. That scared me. Sorry. So please remember, no one has to go it alone when we all come together. You can get a hold of me at 970-909-0751, 970-909-0751, Zach at communitypayitforward.us, Zach at communitypayitforward.us. Please take care of each other, because, well, we're all we got. We'll see you next week. Thank you.